Amongst participants then, what was the mood like about Moscow becoming a financial centre, for example?
Generally optimistic. People are generally optimistic that Moscow can become, at least initially, a regional financial centre. I think that even the most optimistic Russians see that London being challenged by Moscow or New York being challenged by Moscow is a long way off. People say, well, who's to say what will happen in 20, 30 years' time, but that's the kind of time frame you're looking at. But in the 5 to 10 year period, I think it's realistic that, for example, for the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, the former Soviet republics, that Moscow could become a significant financial centre. It could become a place for listing on the stock exchange, and indeed that stock exchange in Russia would be boosted by it. So I think that there's those two agendas. There's the short term, which says that for the CIS, indeed possibly even for Eastern Europe, Russia could become a significant place for companies to trade. But then in the longer term, why not?
Changing the focus slightly, how do you and your members feel about the reforms in Russia that were implemented after the financial crisis? Do you think the modernisation agenda is translating into tangible deeds?
The label of modernisation is in some ways it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it shows that the Kremlin, that the government have an idea of what they want to do. They recognise that Russia has still got some way to do to catch up with the West in particular. But it's a curse also because people, having had these labels, as I say, going back to perestroika, or indeed before that 5-year plan in communist times, and they sort of see, well, it's just a label, is there anything behind it? I think there is something behind it, and I think that's where the West can actually help.
And so those are the industries you'd feel were the growth industries in Russia at the moment, things like high-tech and nanotechnology and that sort of thing?
High-tech and nanotechnology are very, very significant at the moment, but I would say there is still plenty of room for things that we're particularly good at in Britain, which are, for example, financial services, legal services. A lot of Russians, even in contracts between Russians and Russians, want to have it governed by English law, which is a big compliment to us in one way, but it also shows that the strength of the legal system in the UK and in England. Of course, English law is separate from Scottish law, but a lot of the cases come to the High Court in London. So that is an area that we can still do well. I would love to see more British companies getting involved in retail. We've got some very strong retailers in this country, and indeed, when I was in Nizhny Novgorod, I saw a lot of familiar brand names. They're rather more done on a franchise basis, but even so, there are a lot of things that we sell, a lot of retail products that we can sell to Russia. Also, actually, we're still rather good at manufacturing. There's a big myth gone out in recent years because a lot of manufacturing industry in the UK did close down. That, oh, we're not very good at it. Actually, we're very good. There's a company which makes air filters, for example, which they're the best in the world, and they do a very good business in Russia, not just in Moscow and St. Petersburg, but in a lot of other places too. There's a company which makes protection equipment for building sites and so on, helmets and masks and so on. They're also doing very well in Russia. So there are some real success stories, and I think we can only build on that. And I'm looking forward to 2011 and actually pushing forward the agenda with the Intergovernmental Steering Committee and also with private business in the UK to say, look, there's some great opportunities in Russia.